What is good, everyone? What is good? Welcome back to another video. Today, we're jumping back into the Go Battle League arena, this time back into the Open Ultra League featuring a team with Galarian Stunfisk. Yes, that is everyone's favorite Pancake, aka the Steel Bear Trap, on the lead. This is a best buddy Galarian Stunfisk, as well as Pidgeot on the safe swap, non-best buddy. Still love it though. And a Trevenant in the back as our closer, waiting until the end of matches to make its triumphant, glorious return back to the Open Ultra League. The objective for this team today is to play out some neutral or even some not so great leads with our Galarian Stunfisk before pivoting into our Pidgeot. Pidgeot will likely be countered by the opponent's counter swap, so the objective for our Pidgeot is just to chip, get the opponent a little bit low, and to also debuff the opponent with Feather Dance before bringing in either Stunfisk to do some chip damage, draw out its hardest counters, allowing the Trevenant to come in and sweep the end game. I had a ton of fun running this team today. It was actually my first time running Pidgeot in the Ultra League. I just built this Pokemon right before I recorded these battles, and this was also my first time with Galarian Stunfisk as a best buddy in the Ultra League. So overall, this was a new experience, fun experience, and I'm excited to share it with y'all. So without further ado, let's go ahead and hop into some battles. Jumping straight into the first battle, we have our Galarian Stunfisk on the lead against the opponent Jellicent. This is not a great matchup for us, as we will be immediately pivoting out into our Pidgeot. Pidgeot will be resisting these hexes, and unless the Jellicent is running Ice Beam, which, spoilers, they are not, they're almost always more than likely running Surf and Shadow Ball, with the occasional sicko running Bubble Beam. But here we do see our Pidgeot is able to take the damage from that Surf, no problem, firing off the Feather Dance, effectively ejecting that Jellicent from the battle and bringing in the opponent's Clefable. Clefable did recently receive the move update, which we can just be straight up and call it a buff of Fairy Wind on as a fast move, which allows it to generate energy extremely quickly. And there we saw the opponent able to reach that Meteor Mash, does pretty significant damage onto our Pidgeot, but we are able to reach another charge move, firing off the Brave Bird, knocking out the opponent's Clefable and drawing in their final Pokemon, which is going to be a sort of justice being Cobalion. Cobalion taking the Feather Dance before knocking out our Pidgeot, but Cobalion now has their attack debuffed by 2 stages. So even though we do have 2 shields to expend on our final 2 Pokemon, we do not have to respect that Stone Edge damage, as it is double debuffed. Instead, we will shield the opponent Jellicent's charge move, but we do get baited as it is just a Surf. This Trevenant is our win condition, so we are going to protect it with 2 shields, but the opponent double baits us, and we are now unfortunately down 2 shields to 0. We are able to claim the first shield and will be claiming the opponent's final shield with consecutive Seed Bombs. As Seed Bomb does claim the opponent's shield, will this Stunfisk be able to knock out the opponent? No, we reach the Rock Slide just as the opponent is able to fire off this Surf. Knowing that the opponent would be winning CMP tie, I instead chose to overfarm, but in this instance, I overfarmed too much, got a little too greedy, and am continuing to build energy before the opponent brings back in their Sword of Justice. Unfortunately for Cobalion, it will be getting absolutely obliterated with our Earthquake, as Stunfisk is able to reach another charge move, this time the Rock Slide, but it does not matter as it is more than enough to call game, knocking out the opponent's Jellyfish. Well played by the opponent. Thank you for the match. Hopping into the next battle, we have Stunfisk on the lead against Golisopod. So this is also an interesting, somewhat neutral matchup, as our Stunfisk will be able to deal super effective damage with our Rock Slides, but the opponent can return the super effective damage in kind with the Liquidation. Stunfisk absorbs that damage from the Liquidation, and fortunate for us, we do not get the defense drop, as we will be able to easily outpace the Golisopod here as the opponent knows that we can outpace and instead will be firing off the X's or hoping that we are not keeping track of the energy. But unfortunately for them, we are and are able to easily reach another rock slide. I could have farmed up just a little bit more there as the opponent does bring in their Haxorus. Haxorus is counter swapped by our Pidgeot, as Pidgeot will be absorbing this breaking swipe damage. Haxorus is an extremely attack weighted Pokemon, so this neutral damage will be very significant onto our Pidgeot. I unfortunately overfarm way too much here, but I do know that Pidgeot will be surviving one final breaking swipe from the opponent, able to reach this Brave Bird, putting the Haxorus extremely low, even though our attack was double debuffed. So the Haxorus now effectively on 1 HP. We go for the snipe with the Shadow Claw, but we are unable to knock out the opponent's Haxorus, instead greeted by the opponent's Jellyfish once again. Trevenant throwing its first Seed Bomb. Seed Bomb nerfed this season as it now does cost additional energy, but it does deal a little bit more damage as well. So is it a great trade-off? Not entirely, but it doesn't nerf Trevenant into the ground, as you'll see in some of these battles today, as Trevenant able to reach a second Seed Bomb, claiming the opponent's final shield. Will we be calling this bait from the opponent? No, we are going to respect the damage. And unfortunately for us, we did get baited once again, but we are still able to reach a third Seed Bomb, which will be knocking out this opponent's Jellyfish quite easily, with one Shadow Claw doing the job to call game. Well played by the opponent. Thank you for the match. I fully respect the Haxorus bring there. Haxorus is an awesome Pokemon, and I look forward to featuring it in some upcoming battles. But for now, we have another terrible lead with Stunfisk on the lead against the opponent's Obstagoon. We safe swap into our Pidgeot and are met by the opponent's Tapu Fini. Tapu Fini is going to no shield this Feather Dance, as I did fall into the trap of basic debuff players with always throwing this debuff move first. But you will see in later battles, I kind of break that trend because I didn't want to get stuck into that category. No disrespect to anyone out there, as we do reach another charge move. This time it will be the Brave Bird. We full send the Brave Bird and are able to knock out the opponent's Tapu Fini. We are double debuffed in our defense, but the opponent will have to respect this damage if they want to preserve the health on their Obstagoon. They choose not to, as we instead are swapping into our Stunfisk. Stunfisk will be able to absorb this damage relatively well on the Cross Chops, as Cross Chop isn't the strongest move, and this being Ultra League, the Pokemon are naturally going to be a lot more tanky. We are going to put shield pressure on this opponent's Obstagoon, as they are in a plus matchup and they will expend their first shield to preserve this matchup. This Cross Chop will be threatening the health of our Stunfisk, but we are able to survive, unable to reach another charge move before the opponent's Obstagoon is knocking us out. We are in a tough spot here, as the opponent swaps out from their Obstagoon, which is a great matchup, but they didn't want to have to expend a shield on the Seed Bomb and are instead pivoting into their Talonflame. Talonflame does not respect the damage from our Shadow Ball, and from here, I'm thinking we might be able to Shadow Claw down. The opponent intelligently debuffs themselves, giving us less farm energy on the Shadow Claw. We reach the Seed Bomb. The opponent swaps into their Obstagoon, and from here, it's going to be a race. But they know this, and they are able to get the boost, which is enough to knock out our Pidgeot. Unfortunately, I was telling myself if they didn't get that boost, we would have been able to survive, potentially get to another Feather Dance, which would have been enough to knock out the opponent or claim their final shield and allow us to knock the opponent out with our Seed Bomb on Trevenant. But regardless, well played to the opponent. Thank you for the match. Hopping into the next battle, we have Giratina, Dragon Breath Giratina against our Galarian Stunfisk, and Stunfisk will be able to win this matchup going straight Earthquake. The opponent chooses to not delay the inevitable. I'm not sure what they saw about Galarian Stunfisk. Maybe they were ABC weak to it. I'm not entirely sure, but they call game. Well played. Thank you for the match. And hopping straight into our next battle, we have a shiny, beautiful Tapu Fini on the lead against our Stunfisk. We immediately swap into our Pidgeot and are hard counter swapped by the opponent's Ampharos. Ampharos dealing heavy damage with the fast move of Volt Switch, and we are not able to survive, instead going down. The opponent bringing a ton of energy into this matchup with our Galarian Stunfisk, I will respect the Focus Blast here, and unfortunately, it is just a Brutal Swing. The opponent now no longer has enough energy for the Focus Blast, so I will allow this Brutal Swing to go through, but they are able to reach a third Brutal Swing. Even though this is a Shadow Ampharos, it is a lot more tanky than I had anticipated, as the opponent does swap back into their Tapu Fini, and this is going to be a tough matchup for us depending on what the opponent has in the back. They swap into a Drapion, and this is just pretty much a GG. We're going to play this one out, but if we're being real here, we were hard countered on the lead, on the swap, as well as with our closer. As this Drapion, we're going to see if they are running Crunch. Of course they are, and that is essentially enough to one-shot us. As our Stunfisk, doesn't really matter how we play this, we are going to be aligned with the Tapu Fini endgame, and they do still have 2 shields. So I choose to not delay the inevitable, allowing the opponent to reach a final charge move, knocking out our Galarian Stunfisk as Drapion calls game. Well played by the opponent. Thank you for the match. That was a tough matchup there. We do see the 3-2 hopping into our next set. We have a pretty awesome lead here with Stunfisk on the lead against Charizard. Charizard is great to see on the lead, as Trevenant in the back will obviously definitely not want to be aligned with that Charizard. We stay in with our Galarian Stunfisk, and in hindsight, maybe it would have been the better move to bring in the Trevenant, but Stunfisk seems like the easiest answer and the hardest counter to Walrein that we have on our team. And I'm hoping that if we will be able to knock out this Walrein and bring some energy into our matchup with Charizard. The opponent expends their first shield, and we should be respecting the damage here from the potential Earthquake, but the opponent is able to successfully bait us, instead throwing the Icicle Spear. Stunfisk is able to reach another Rock Slide. This will be knocking out the opponent's Walrein. No, it does not knock them out. Do they reach another charge move? No, they were building up toward the Earthquake, but they are unable to throw that and instead get knocked out with a ton of energy. Opponent brings in their Swampert, and Swampert will be firing off this Hydro Cannon into our Pidgeot. We did build up 1.5 Rock Slides onto our Stunfisk as well, as Pidgeot will be able to survive a second Hydro Cannon as we are now low, but Swampert is doing minimal damage with its fast move of Mudshot, as Pidgeot is easily able to reach a charge move, and this time we do full send the Brave Bird as the opponent expends their final shield. Now switch locked in their Charizard, we can easily bring in our Stunfisk, knock out this Charizard, and it doesn't really matter what happens to our Pancake after this, as we do have a full health Trevenant in the back, which will be aligned with the opponent's Swampert, and this is looking like a GG, as Stunfisk is able to knock out the opponent's Charizard. We swap in the Trevenant, basically showing our hand, letting them know, hey, this is pretty much over. They respect the play. Opponent calls game, choosing to not delay the inevitable. Well played by them. Thank you for the match. Hopping into the next battle, we have a fairly favorable lead with our Galarian Stunfisk aligned with the opponent's Cresselia. Stunfisk does win this matchup in basically all realistic shield scenarios, but we are okay with our Trevenant being aligned to this Cresselia late game, so we do pivot into our Pidgeot, expecting the opponent to swap out into their Pidgeot answer, but they do not, instead taking this Feather Dance and firing off their charge move on the CMP tie. This was a misplay by the opponent, as that Moonblast is now double debuffed and they are continuing to stay in. Will the opponent's Cresselia respect the damage from our Brave Bird, or are they expecting another bait? They do not respect the damage, and that is doing heavy damage onto the Cresselia, as this Moonblast will be knocking out our Pidgeot. We can now bring back in our Galarian Stunfisk and can fire off this Earthquake before the Cresselia is able to get to another charge move. Stunfisk able to knock out the opponent. Let's see what they have in the back. It is going to be Swampert. Having lost switch and with our Stunfisk aligned against the opponent's Swampert, we know we have to make a play here, and we are able to do so, catching the Hydro Cannon onto our Galarian, or onto our Trevenant, seeing what the opponent has in the back, and unfortunately for us, it is going to be the Talonflame. Talonflame will not respect the damage from our Trevenant. Will our Trevenant be able to Shadow Claw down? We are not able to. Question is, does Trevenant have more than 1 HP to survive this flame charge? We do. We are able to reach another charge move, this being the Seed Bomb against the opponent's Swampert, as they will be shielding that charge move and doing one mudshot to farm us down. Swampert able to reach a charge move. I want to see how much this Hydro Cannon is going to do, and we also don't want to give up our final shield yet, which would allow the opponent to do some mudshot damage and be able to knock us out with one Earthquake. And at this point, it is looking bleak as the Earthquake does do some heavy neutral damage. And the question now becomes, can we reach 2 Rock Slides before the opponent reaches 2 Hydro Cannons? I think they may have just reached it. Opponent will be expending their final shield to block this Rock Slide. We CMP tie, and Swampert wins CMP against our Galarian Pancake, able to call game on the CMP tie with their Hydro Cannon. Well played by the opponent. Thank you for the match. That one was a lot of fun, and it came down to the wire. The CMP tie didn't go our way, but we hop straight into the next one with an all too familiar lead with the Swampert aligned against our Stunfisk. We go for the catch, but the opponent is expecting it and continues building up energy now at the Earthquake before counter swapping into their wall rain. This is going to be tough for us as we are able to double debuff the opponent with our Feather Dance. Question is, how much damage will this Icicle Spear do now? We should be able to survive one more and reach another charge move. Pidgeot, will you be able to survive, please? Pidgeot is able to survive and reaches another charge move. This Feather Dance will be further debuffing the opponent. Will they respect the damage? And no, they intelligently no shield, as shouts out to that trainer. They were doing a great job counting our fast moves. They knew that was only going to be the Feather Dance, as they are able to knock out our Pidgeot and maintain alignment, which will be crucial. This Walrus is now 4 times debuffed, so I will not be respecting the damage from this Earthquake. And as you see there, it does next to nothing, even though it is a super effective charge move. We are able to swap into our Trevenant, catch the Hydro Cannon from the Swampert, and the question once again becomes, what do they have in the back? They pivot into their Ghost Tree. Trevenant will be firing off a Shadow Ball, full sending the Shadow Ball. Is that a misplay from me? It may have been, as we will not be able to reach another charge move. The opponent could have gone for the full farm down there, but instead they choose the safe play, fire off the Seed Bomb, and will now be aligned against our Galarian Stunfisk. Stunfisk up against the wall here with 2 shields to the opponent's 1, but facing 2 hard counters to it, or 1 counter and 1 really hard counter against the Swampert, as we do expend 1 shield on the opponent's Seed Bomb, able to knock out the opponent's Trevenant. But here, not much we can do, as the opponent is nearly at another Hydro Cannon, and they do still have 1 shield. They call our bait, as more great counting from the opponent. And from here, I choose to not delay the inevitable, as they definitely won this one with their fantastic play. So well played by the opponent. Thank you for the match. So back-to-back difficult matchups to start this set, as in hindsight, maybe I should have been fighting a little bit harder for Switch. Hopping into the next battle, though, we do have a great lead with our Stunfisk aligned against the opponent's Spider, that being the Galvantula. As the opponent is staying in here, taking the damage from this Rock Slide, no shielding, building up a ton of energy before pivoting into their Tapu Fini. I choose to counter swap into my Pidgeot, thinking that this Pidgeot definitely does not want to see the opponent's Galvantula, knowing that it does have a ton of energy. So instead, I pivot into my Pidgeot and am able to outpace the opponent, reaching the Feather Dance, which does force the opponent to FF and call game. Well played by them. Thank you for the match. That Feather Dance debuff is sometimes backbreaking, it's heart-wrenching, but also not entirely sure what the opponent's play was there. They were building up a ton of energy with their Galvantula, and I would have liked to see what they had in the back. But as the old saying goes, we take those, as we do see Obstagoon on the lead against our Stunfisk, and we immediately pivot out into our Pidgeot. Pidgeot able to reach this first charge move against the opponent's Charizard, which will be the Feather Dance, and Charizard being a sort of glass cannon even in the Ultra League, they will be respecting the potential Brave Bird, expending their first shield. As the opponent is now 2 times debuffed, we are going to no shield that Blast Burn, as well as the corresponding Dragon Claw. And Pidgeot able to survive on, let's not call it 1 HP, let's say a handful of HP. Let's be respectful here. And reach the Brave Bird, bam, knocking the Charizard out of the sky and being aligned against the opponent's Trevenant, but Trevenant able to get the Shadow Claw down, the 2 times resisted Shadow Claws on our Pidgeot. And here I choose to bring in my Ghost Tree into the opponent's, respecting the damage from the potential Shadow Ball, expending my first shield onto the opponent's Seed Bomb. Great bait by them and great combo play. They are able to swap into their Obstagoon. Obstagoon will be double or 4 times resisting our Shadow Claws with neutral damage dealt from the Seed Bomb. I'm not entirely sure how bad this matchup is for us at this time because they did throw the Cross Chop at first. So I was thinking maybe they're running Cross Chop and Gunk Shot or Cross Chop and Hyper Beam, but no, they are running Night Slash. So they must have just misclicked or something and are able to reach another Cross Chop, firing it off into our Pancake before we are able to throw this Earthquake. Earthquake will be dealing heavy damage onto the opponent and they no shield, but are still able to reach another charge move. Will we respect this damage? We do not. Instead, knowing that we can survive, reach another Rock Slide against this opponent and putting this matchup on the shoulders of our Trevenant. The opponent's Trevenant no shields, gets the full farm down, and this was a misplay by me, potentially, as our Trevenant does not have as much health as I would have thought. Will we be able to reach the back-to-back Seed Bombs here? No, we do not. We were 1 Shadow Claw away, maybe 2. But regardless, that's the opponent calling game. Well played by them. Thank you for the match. So overall, I had a great time running this line today, misplaying like a crazy person, but it was so much fun being able to bring my best buddy Galarian Stunfisk into the Ultra League, as well as trying out Pidgeot for the first time in Ultra and seeing the performance of the quote-unquote nerfed Trevenant. Overall, I think that Galarian Stunfisk is awesome as a lead. Even though we did hard lose a lot of those lead matchups, we still did see Stunfisk putting in some work with its bulk as well as with its great coverage on the charge moves, able to either do some significant chip damage, allowing Trevenant to sweep endgame, or Galarian Stunfisk itself able to sweep some of those endgames, especially with Charizard on the back end. What's awesome too is that we did just have that Stunfisk related research day, so even though it is rather expensive to build, I would fully recommend it to anyone who is looking for a more unusual or uncommon pick in the Ultra League and anyone who might be a fan of the Pancake. But that's going to be all for me. Thank you so much for stopping by. Please leave a comment down below if you want to leave some feedback on the videos or if you have any potential Pokemon that you want to see featured in any upcoming videos. But that's going to be all from me. Thanks for stopping by. Remember to enjoy the small things. Peace.